Inflation is on the rise again. After a small dip in April, new data from May is revealing that inflation is surging higher than what was expected. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with a breakdown on data and what President Biden has to say about it.
No good news for your pocketbook today, with latest inflation data showing consumer prices are up 8.6% from a year ago. That's the biggest yearly increase since December of 1981. The president today telling the American people that he understands their pain.
I understand Americans are anxious, and they're anxious for good reason.
Here's where the highest costs are. Meats cost anywhere from 10 to 17% more, and milk is nearly 16% more expensive. Housing is up 5.5%, and your vacation this year could cost nearly double your normal amount, with airline fees up nearly 38%. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy, jumped 0.6% month over month. As for gas prices, 60 cents higher than last month, nearly $2 more than a year ago.
The Saudis raised their prices for oil they're selling to Asia. That tells me I don't really see relief in the near term.
President Biden today continuing to push the same messaging that we've heard all year, pinning blame on Putin and U.S. oil companies.
You talk about how they have 9,000 permits to drill. They're not drilling. I'm doing everything in my power to blunt Putin's price hike.
But experts tell NTD the White House can do more to lower the price at the pump.
At these prices, I think it's fair to say oil companies are trying to produce. It makes business sense. They also are trying to produce natural gas. But you have to get it to market. And so the administration has to be transparent about whether they're also approving permits and licenses for pipelines.
So, Melina, how is the Federal Reserve expected to respond to this record high inflation?
Steve, the Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates by at least 50 basis points this month and next month. Now, some economists are predicting and expecting the Fed to raise interest rates by as much as 0.75%. Now, what appears to be certain here is that the Fed will continue to raise these interest rates, but what's uncertain is whether or not we've seen the peak of inflation. Steve, back to you.
Facing record high inflation, we spoke to Representative Cammack from Florida. What can lawmakers do to help ease this situation? Have a listen. Congresswoman Cammack, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report again.
Hey, so good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Congresswoman, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was on the Hill again this week answering to the high inflation the country is experiencing. What is the Treasury's role or responsibility in any and all of this?
I think that this is, again, just indicative of the Biden administration's lack of planning and lack of understanding of the role of government. Yet they continue to spend money up to $7 trillion we saw last year. This is Economics 101. The more that the government spends, the more it expands, the less that we, the people, get to keep in our pockets. And so for Janet Yellen to admit that she was wrong about inflation being transitory, and then to appear again and say, well, we have a plan, but then can't outline that plan, that was pretty troubling to me. And if the government were smart, if this administration were going to take an aggressive role in tackling inflation, which is crippling everyday American working class families, they would get out of the way. They would stop spending money. That is what is driving this. They have a regulatory environment that is not conducive to business. And so we need to get government out of the way. We need to let the free market system work. And the more that we tinker, the more that we see the Treasury getting involved, the more that we see the Fed increasing rates, we're seeing more and more likelihood of an upcoming recession.
And to your point, Congresswoman, she's also said that she believes that inflation is here to stay. Has the damage already been done, or do you think there is a pathway out of this?
Well, you look at the numbers. In July of last year, inflation was about 1.7%. Today, it's over 8.3%. This is going to continue to get worse as government continues to spend. When she says that it's here to stay, it's not something that we cope with. It's something that we need to take an aggressive stance in modifying and changing course. And to what I was saying earlier, how you do that is you stop spending government money, the people's money. We start cutting programs. We start living the way that everyday Americans have to, and that's within a budget. It would be nice to see the Democrats put out a budget. They have yet to do so, and this is something that is going to continue to hurt business, hurt our economy, hurt working class families and seniors if we do not get it under control. It's not something that we should anticipate being here for the long haul, but under this administration, I fear that will be the case.
What are you hearing on the Hill in terms of gas prices? Is there anything Congress can do to reverse this record-breaking trend?
You know, when you look at what this administration has done, they failed to authorize a single permit for any domestic production. We also are seeing the regulatory environment strangle our existing businesses and lines of production out of business. It's creating a lot of uncertainty, but more importantly, volatility in the market. And from a business standpoint, when you look at the price of diesel, for example, when it's swinging so violently from one day to the next, it's impossible to plan long term, heck, even run a business for a week or so. And so we have a real challenge in addressing this. It also doesn't help that we have the Speaker of the House who is saying that she will not bring our domestic energy independence bill to the floor. In fact, she has rejected it 6 times. Now, that's the problem, that the left wants nothing to do with domestic production of energy. They don't believe in above all energy portfolio. They don't believe in nuclear. They don't believe in LNG. They don't believe in fossil fuels. But we are an energy economy. And if we are to get our ship righted, we need to tap into the resources that we have here in abundance. And the thing that I continually go back to is everyone wants to be an above all, but unless it is driven by the free markets, it's not going to be viable. And this push that the administration is making towards electric vehicles, this is stressing the grid. And we're already seeing reports coming out of brownouts and blackouts happening across the country, and they'll continue to go on throughout the summer. This is unacceptable. We have the means to produce enough energy for our economy and then some. We need to get government out of the way. Congress can act. It's Nancy Pelosi who refuses to.
Congresswoman Kat Cammack, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
The Biden administration is lifting the requirement for travelers that they must test negative for COVID-19 one day before boarding a flight to the United States. Travel industry groups and airlines have been saying that customers are putting off international travel because of the strict testing requirement needed to enter the U.S. Scientific experts are also saying that testing before flights no longer makes sense. COVID-19 is already highly prevalent in the U.S. regardless of vaccination status. The CDC said it will reinstate the testing requirement if a new dangerous variant does emerge. Following the first primetime hearing where the committee highlighted certain parts of January 6th, we have member of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Andy Biggs, with us to discuss. Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you so much for joining us in the Capitol Report.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Congressman, the primetime hearings on January 6th last night, did you learn anything new? Were there any big takeaways for you?
No, there really wasn't anything new. I didn't think. Kind of a slow-moving, production, if you ask me.
Congressman, as a member of Congress, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, how common is an evening hearing like that that we saw last night?
It's not unusual for us to start a hearing at 10 a.m. and conclude it at 10 p.m. What is unusual is to hire an ABC producer to come in and try to spice it up and turn it into an extravaganza. And that's the only thing different, I think, from normal. Normally, we just do our work and move on.
Congressman, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not this is an unbiased committee. There are technically 2 Republicans there. What are some of the questions you would have liked to have heard asked or have answered regarding that day?
Well, ultimately, what we need to find out is why didn't Mayor Bowser and Nancy Pelosi accept the proffered and authorized 20,000 National Guards troops from President Trump? I don't know if we're going to find that out, but 4 people testified to this committee that he made that offer. The second thing I think that's so important is why are they not releasing tapes? Why are they selectively releasing video? I mean, even the video that we saw last night is almost identical to other video that's been leaked over time. They just maybe took it from a different angle. There are supposedly 14,000 hours of video. Why are we not seeing all of that? And then the third thing is, why are we not bringing in the FBI and those who concluded that there was no collusion between President Trump and any of these rioters? So, I mean, there's a whole host of things that deal with that I think have got to be revealed. And then, I think there's a lot of individual cases that we look at and we just say, what's going on there? And then I would like to know what's going on with the January 6th defendants and why they've been held, some of them for almost 15, 16 months without a trial.
Congressman, will these hearings ultimately have any impact on the upcoming midterms or even the 2024 presidential election?
I don't think so. I think the reality is most Americans have moved on, and why have they moved on? This is because, in fact, polling indicates that most people don't even think President Trump's responsible at all anymore for this. But when you start examining things, I think people get concerned like I do. I pay $90 now to fill my car up with gas. I'm buying product for paying the same price, but they've either reduced the number of tortillas in the packet I get or the size of the tortillas, which blew my mind when I bought a pack last week. And I think that's what people are concerned about. They're really concerned about inflation. They're really concerned about energy prices, the economy. They're looking at the border and they're saying, what is going on here? They're concerned about high crime rates. They're concerned about our declining prestige internationally. And there's a whole congeries of things that people are concerned about. But most people are not concerned with a riot that took place at the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Global migration is a mounting issue for countries who attended the Americas Summit this week. President Biden and leaders in the Western Hemisphere adopted a migration declaration. The U.S. has now committed to invest hundreds of millions of dollars for managing migration throughout the Americas. The agreement includes $314 million to assist refugees and, quote, vulnerable migrants across the hemisphere, including humanitarian aid for Venezuelans who've fled to 17 different countries. The White House has also dedicated $25 million to a global organization at the World Bank. This money is supposed to help Latin American countries like Ecuador and Costa Rica to support their programs for displaced migrants. The countries have also agreed on a sting operation to disrupt human smuggling networks across the hemisphere. Here's the Secretary of Homeland Security today explaining the scope of the operation.
We have brought an all-of-government effort to attack the smuggling organizations. But we're working very carefully with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a number of agencies within the Department of Justice, and, of course, our partners in Mexico.
In May, the Department of Homeland Security began implementing a new process meant to expedite asylum claim processing. And Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met with his Chinese counterpart for the first time since assuming his role. This was in Singapore. And one big takeaway is the two sides still stand by their opposing views on Taiwan after the meeting. The meeting between Austin and Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe lasted about an hour. After the meeting, Wei told reporters that the talks went smoothly. Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson later said that Wei reiterated that Taiwan belongs to China. And according to a statement, Austin called on China to refrain from further destabilizing actions aimed at Taiwan.